Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 8th of September 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to have Ben Rubin with me in the studio, and Diane Rasmussen McCaddy will be joining us by live link from the northeast of England. Probably the first thing for me to say, and of course you can all see it on your screens, is an utterly beautiful day here in Plymouth. It's warm. Sun shining, obviously, blue sky there in the background. So we've got a lovely setting for today's news, which is just as well, because over a number of months, UK Column has been saying to our audience, if you can't understand what is happening in politics in the UK, but also elsewhere in the world, try getting your mind into the idea, the concept that we are being attacked by our own government and its agents. And I think really that theme sticks with us for, today's news. So Ben, you're going to be kicking off with states within a state. We're going to be having a look at the militarisation of UK. We're going to be looking at that continued attack on the minds of children, particularly via books. And we're also going to be looking at so-called agents of chaos. And we're going to be looking at the people who've been appointed in positions of power with regard to protecting individuals from sex abuse. And finally, we're going to get into a little bit of what life should be like, having a look at a big rural show. So we are going to end on a higher plane, but first of all, we need to get through some pretty serious reporting as to what's taking place in UK. Ben.
Thanks, Brian. Good afternoon, everybody. And it was a tumultuous week last week in the Labour cabinet, and I think it's fair to say that the age of Angela Rayner has ended and the era of David Lammy has begun. David Lammy has been elevated. He is now the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice and Deputy Prime Minister, a heartbeat away from running the country, as they say. But who would Lammy be running the country for? The British nation as a whole, or a small, racially segregated subset of the British people at the expense of everybody else? It's a big question. And for some clues as to the answer, I think we can head to this event that was held earlier on this summer in the University of Cambridge, celebrating David Lammy's 25 years in public service. Look at the smile on his face. He's absolutely loving this.
He looks very pleased
He looks very pleased with himself. What's all this about? Let's hear from the host. This is from Lord Woolley. What an honour. What an evening. Friends came out to share stories of how their lives and hopes had entwined and bonded with the working class kid from Tottenham, who now stands as the most powerful black political figure in Europe. Capital B on black, remember that, Brian? And when David took the mic and scanned the room, he paused, took a knowing deep breath and said, "I'm amongst many dear friends. We've done so much together, but there's so much more to do. So much more to do. Working together." What was this event all about? It was about black excellence, working better together. Let's have a little read of some of this. Black excellence working better together emerges as a bold and necessary outcome of this landmark dinner convened by Baron Woolley of Woodford. Woolley spelt incorrectly, by the way. There's two L's in Woolley. Baron Woolley, with the presence of the Right Honourable David Lammy MP, Secretary of Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs. As I said, this is a few months ago now. Goes on to read, "This exceptional gathering of distinguished leaders and changemakers marks the beginning of a visionary agenda towards 2030, big year that, and beyond, and is centred on fostering, curating and harnessing the power and collective prosperity of people of African and Caribbean descent in the United Kingdom and across the wider diaspora. Lammy is part of a network that is seeking to build power and prosperity for Afro-Caribbean people in the UK and elsewhere on Earth at the expense of everybody else, not the British people as a whole." Based on what that says, this event was held in his honour. Right, so it's going to be governing essentially for a discrete minority of the British people. It goes on to say, working together seeks to ensure that the whole becomes greater than the dynamic of its parts. This is about creating a network of connected individuals in culture, politics, industry, elsewhere, who are working to further their own ends at the expense of everybody else. It's a discrete but powerful network. It's a bunch of people here you can see in the room there. Not particularly diverse, which is interesting, given that I'm sure that they spend a lot of time talking about diversity. It includes the likes of Oswald Boateng on the left there, the Savile Row Taylor, Lord Hastings, currently chair of SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies, who was also former head of public affairs and corporate social responsibility at the BBC through the 90s, former head of citizenship at KPMG, big-time UN SDG proponent, Lord Hastings. Big time, right? So these are people pushing a UN agenda. That's what's going on here. And ultimately working to undermine the British system for their own benefit. That's what this is all about. This event was convened by Lord Woolley on the right-hand side there, spelt his name correctly for him this time, who's principal at Harman College in Cambridge, despite the fact that he can't spell his own name. And he is the founder, well, back in the 90s, was the founder of this thing, Operation Black Vote. It describes itself as the home of black politics. This was founded back in 1996. You can see here Lord Woolley in the middle there, just to the right-hand side of the guy with the megaphone. Also Lee Jasper on the right-hand side with his hand over the front of the banner. Very closely linked into the Blair regime, spent loads of time lobbying Blair, and closely aligned with the Labour Party, which is traditionally the party of ethnic minorities, one of the reasons why people on the left are so pro-migration ultimately. But linked into all of the major political parties, and also apparently has a very loose definition of what black is. So it's not just Afro-Caribbean, it's also basically anyone of kind of non-native ethnic identities. You can see Sadiq Khan on the right-hand side of this picture. This is from 2010. Lord Mervyn Rees back centre right there as well. So, you know, some very, very powerful and well-connected people here in this network, essentially this parallel network, this state within a state that is designed to benefit a subset of the population. Ultimately, it has to be at the expense of everybody else.
That's certainly the way it seems, Ben. And of course, they're meeting, as those pictures have shown, in very, very privileged circumstances.
Yes.
Whining and dining. And this is always a key statement. So members of the black and minority ethnic groups in UK should be very, very concerned about what's happening here, because this is the same sort of privileged structure that's produced people on Tony Blair's side. So we're heading to the white-sided community.
Yes.
So this is an equivalent. This is like the dark mirror of what is already in place, and this is not going to benefit black people as a whole in this country. It's going to benefit the elites within that community.
It's exactly right. That is exactly right. They are playing the corrupt power game. Yes. They're not trying to make things fairer for the collective. I think it's a really important point to make. Let's bring it back to David Lammy and bring it up to date. So actually, how does this link to this Operation Black Vote organisation? How does that link into Lammy, beyond the obvious personal relationship between Lord Woolley and David Lammy? Well, Operation Black Vote was the primary inspiration for this organisation, the Black Equity Organisation, which I've spoken about a few times over the past year or two, launched in 2020 in the wake of the George Floyd situation. Lammy was a founding trustee. You can see him on the left-hand side there in the centre on this image from the homepage of the website. What is equity, and what's the difference between equity and equality, importantly? Well, equality means every person, group of people or segment of society gets the same opportunities, resources and support, which is, I think, what we should be aiming for. But equity apparently goes further. People with different circumstances, those who have been historically marginalised and oppressed, for example, receive varying levels of opportunities and support so they're able to reach an outcome equal to others. It levels things up. This is equality of outcome. This is, by definition, this is a communist system that is being promoted here. It can only be delivered by a totalitarian state intervening in the social order on a constant basis. So someone has to sit in the centre deciding what is equal and what isn't equal and intervening in order to make it more so, right? It's a necessary part of this system. And it's also based on this completely flawed collectivist worldview, which tells us that all black people are oppressed and marginalized and all white people are supposedly in positions of privilege and power, which is completely ridiculous. Even just on some basic analysis, right? There are plenty of white people in this country who are oppressed, marginalized, extremely poor, have been forever. It's, this generational stuff. And also there are plenty of what they call black people who are in positions of extraordinary privilege, particularly if you go to big cities like London, where you have Nigerian princes and princesses driving around Mayfair in Rolls Royces, for example. There's plenty of that going on. So, based on a flawed and deliberately manipulative worldview, and importantly, based on a complete inversion of the actual meaning of the word equity as well, because equity actually means this: fairness or justice in the way people are treated, and often specifically related to freedom from disparities in the way people of different races, genders, etc. are treated. So actual equity is about freedom from disparities in treatment. Black equity wants to introduce disparities in the way that people are treated in order to artificially reorder societies. It's a complete inversion of the meaning of the word equity. Why is that important? 2 reasons. First one is that Black Equity Organisation itself is backed by, amongst other organisations, some of London's biggest law firms. So these are top international law firms: A&O Shearman, Clifford Chance, Freshfields, Slaughter and May, Herbert Smith Freehills, you can see there on the right-hand side, as well as organisations like Global Council, which is run by Lord Mandelson, and a whole bunch of other organisations. I can't go into, there's just so much in here in terms of who's backing this, right? But you've got the top law firms whose job is equity, backing an organisation which has inverted the meaning of the word. That's extraordinary to see that happening. But also, crucially, to bring it right back to where we started, David Lammy is now the Secretary of State for Justice. And he doesn't understand what justice means. In fact, he thinks it's the opposite of what it's supposed to be.
But he believes in his own view of it. That's what makes the danger.
Yeah.
A lot more to report on this. And as we've said, we're going to stress that this is something which the black community in the UK need to wake up to very, very quickly, because the ultimate aim, of course, will be to get everybody at each other's throats. Now, all of this is taking place against the backdrop of the war in Ukraine. And of course, the promotion of the war in Ukraine is that Russia is going to move further. We should all be very frightened. And on the basis of that, we've got to gear up for war. And hence the look at the segment I've got for our viewers and listeners today, which is essentially pointing at the militarization of UK. First of all, let's have a listen to former Vice President Pence speaking and his opinion on what Russia will do.
I have no doubt in my mind, if Vladimir Putin overruns Ukraine, it'll only be a matter of time before he crosses a border of a NATO country where my country and all of our allies will have to confront him militarily.
And so do you say that the president gets that? Because that is exactly the fear in the Baltic nations, for instance. And do you say that the US security guarantee should be boots on the ground?
I've been very encouraged just this week, frankly, by the leadership among our allies in Europe to formulate the kind of security guarantees that would create the conditions for a just and lasting peace. I think the United States has made it clear, this administration has made it clear that there'll be a backstop to that. But with our European allies in the forefront. Not surprisingly, Vladimir Putin has already begun to rattle his saber to suggest that European troops on the ground in Ukraine would be, I think in his word, legitimate targets. But that to me tells me that the efforts of our allies coming together in Europe, a backstop by the United States American military, has captured Vladimir Putin's attention and may well be a pathway toward long-term peace.
So for me, Ben, a very mixed message. He's essentially saying, be afraid that Russians are going to come across that border and into the heart of Europe. At the same time, he says, well, the Europeans did so well in their recent meeting that probably Putin's not going to do that. But of course, this is pumped out with the aim of making people more and more fearful. And with it comes the branding of Russia. And of course, the kidnapping of children is one of the key topics. So this was a Sun headline here. Putin's 35,000 kidnapped Ukrainian kids sent to frontline to fight for Russia the moment they turn 18, Brit spies revealed. Now, this article has got absolutely no factual information to back up the claim of this headline. James Mools, who is the journalist who produced this piece of text, interestingly enough, is a former BBC democracy reporter, so I would guess he's pretty in the mould of what the BBC wants to tell the nation, but no substance or factual information at all. And what it does refer to is what the Ukrainian government has said, which is largely propaganda while the fighting goes on, but also Bring Kids Back UA. This charity is mentioned, but again, if we go to look at where the real detail is about how many children the Russians have actually captured and sent to the front, it's big on words and pictures, but there's little evidence. And this also applies to this one, Save Ukraine, another charity apparently working to save all these children. But the reader is provided with absolutely no evidence as to how many children there are in this predicament. And of course, a few months ago, the Russians went public to actually challenge the Ukrainians on the details of these thousands and thousands of children, and no details were provided to the Russians either. So how can we summarize this? Well, it's be afraid. The war is designed to attract our attention while other things go on underneath, as Ben has just shown. But let's have a look at this BBC headline here, which is UK launches 250 million defence strategy to boost jobs. And we'll bring in this little headline to remind people, because the UK column a couple of weeks ago pointed out that at the moment UK is boasting it's got more child cadets than soldiers in the British Army. Now, let's have a listen to what the Defence Secretary Healy had to say about the Ministry of Defence's new role with regard to asylum seekers.
We're absolutely determined. What you're seeing from Keir Starmer now is a recognition that this isn't just a job for the Home Office, it's all of government effort, and we in the MOD will play our part. We've got planners alongside the Home Office. We're looking at military and non-military sites for potential temporary accommodation. And this is about trying to restore control of our borders, which was lost over the last 5 or 6 years, and the confidence of the British people that we can keep them secure and we can reflect our values.
I just want to be very clear about what you're saying, though. You say military planners will be involved in helping to manage what many people see as a crisis in migration. Are you talking about members of the armed forces being involved in enforcing our borders?
So at the moment, we've got military planners involved in helping the Border Command. We've got them alongside Home Office planners looking at potential sites and solutions.
For accommodation.
Make no mistake, we're determined to end the use of expensive asylum hotels. We said that we'll do that by the end of the Parliament. Keir Starmer wants to do that before now. The numbers are coming down. We're processing the applications that were completely stalled under the previous government, and we're deporting more now than we have done in recent years.
So carefully delivered mixed messages. If we can't defend the borders against migrants, we're hardly likely to defend the borders against Putin. But of course, when he was pinned down on what is the Ministry of Defence doing, he didn't really give a clear answer. But at the end of the day, this is more fear factor in the public mind. This is supposedly the invasion of asylum seekers, when the real attack on UK is the permitted migration with vast numbers of people coming into this country, with all the pressures on the infrastructure that brings. But let's just get back to that 250 million defence in industrial strategy and have a look at some of the meat on those bones. This is the first statement that the strategy will offer working families across the country new opportunities. So this is about war, this is about the munitions, this is about everything that we need for war, but it's sold as offering families the opportunity to have a decent job. You can get more cynical if you tried. And the strategy is going to be used in collaboration between local authorities, businesses, academia, and the defence sector. Ben, I'm looking at you because to me this is the public-private partnership at work, and we're not going to be too sure what is actually the big business, the military-industrial complex, and what is government. But now this network is drilled down to very low levels in society. And of course, presumably anybody who challenges it is going to be branded a potential terrorist and accused of some crime against the defence of the nation. We'll give you a bit more here. So he went on to say that these deals offer a new partnership with UK defence to build on industrial and innovation strengths that regions already hold. So there's no doubt this is being driven right into the fabric of UK, down to local community, and I prefer to say county level. Now, some of the things that are coming out of it, Plymouth is going to get a £4 billion bonus to be the UK National Centre for Marine Autonomy, whatever that means. I did do some study, but it wasn't very clear. South Yorkshire is going to become a specialist in advanced materials and steel and submarine and weaponry components. I didn't know that we were producing huge amounts of steel, Ben, but apparently that's something that's going to change. We've got Wales becoming the centre for unmanned aerial vehicles and autonomy research. We've got Scotland, innovation, maritime and space technology. And finally here, Northern Ireland, the leader in cyber security and dual-use technologies. And if we reinforce how big this programme is, this is blueprint for one Devonport. And if you can't read the bottom left-hand corner, small print, we can bring that on screen for you. Devonport 2050, more long-range plans, Ben, very much of the Soviet style, secure, safe support. And what are we looking at, apparently? A world-class, secure, safe, integrated operating and support base for the Royal Navy and NATO. So this tends to indicate that NATO is going to be brought even closer into our national defence structure. And the mission here, meet the support and operating requirements for the Royal Navy and the UK's allies from the southwest reaching worldwide. Now, excuse me, if this is not enough, the other thing that's happening at the moment is we're seeing Ukrainian military industry burying its way into UK. What's the subject? It's drones. So here's the headline, 200 million Ukrainian drone manufacturer factory. And this is about Ukraine's largest drone manufacturer, Ukraine Spec Systems, which has announced a 200 million investment programme in East Anglia, 11,000 square metre factory at Mildenhall, and a test and training site at Elmsett, Suffolk. A project, yes, the good news, it's going to create 500 jobs and apprenticeships across the region. What is it actually doing? Producing drones to kill people in the proxy war in Ukraine. But apparently this is good for UK society and industry. This is Maria Eagle, MP, Defence Procurement Minister. She says this 200 million investment will also improve our industrial base and create up to 500 jobs, driving economic growth and prosperity around the country. Core elements of our upcoming defence industrial strategy. And if that's not enough, we've got another one here, as reported in the Kiev Independent. This is about Raybird drones to be built in the UK in a new joint venture between Ukraine and UK. And this is a partnership between the Ukrainian Skyton and Prevail Solutions to produce military drones. And there are more of these. So we're seeing, alongside all of the things that you're pointing out, Ben, we're seeing an integration of defence in UK with the Ukrainians in much the same way as we're seeing integration between UK and Israel without any checks and balances on what's happening. So let's move on from there. Diane, if society's being attacked here in UK, of course, children are always at the forefront, and you are still on the trail of what's being presented to children.
Yes, thanks, Brian. It's great to be here today. Hello, everyone. I received a lot of response last week to the segment that I did that included the book Granddad's Pride. So I decided to go back and do a little bit more coverage on this book as well as the author that wrote it. So if you haven't seen it from last week's news, I talked about this book called Granddad's Pride, which showed Granddad and the grandchild there taking a trip to, I think, organizing a pride parade and attending and having a wonderful, diverse, and inclusive time. So I looked at a little bit more of the things that have been discussed around Granddad's Pride because it's been such a major thing in social media for the past couple of years. So here's a book review about Granddad's Pride by someone who loved it a lot.
Is Pride Month. So for today's magic bookmark, we are diving into the perfect picture book to celebrate Pride Month with. It is Granddad's Pride by Harry Woodgate.
Take a look inside a book, there's stories to explore. They'll let you see who you could be and teach you so much more. They'll take you on a journey, it's gonna light a spark. Let's turn the page with the magic bookmark. Be who you are, it's the magic bookmark.
Granddad's Pride is the follow-up to Harry's first picture book, Granddad's Camper. And in this one, Millie, the granddaughter, discovers a pride flag in Granddad's attic and wants to know what it's all about. And eventually, she ends up organizing a pride in their local village. And, it will just make you feel so wonderful because Harry demonstrates that pride is about being inclusive of everyone who's LGBTQIA+, but it's also about bringing communities together. As with all of Harry's book, the pictures are absolutely incredible, but I especially love these. And then there's some amazing signs. We've got this one, queer, disabled, fabulous, and out and proud. Trans kids are magic, but this is the image that really has struck with me because it's someone who has the scars of their top surgery, and that's such a wonderful and simple thing to put in a picture book, but that is going to make people feel so included and loved. So go and celebrate your Pride Month with Granddad's Pride by Harry Woodgate.
So, clearly meant for children, clearly quite intense. So I went back to look at Granddad's Camper, and I have bought a copy of that as well. So maybe we can look at the book itself a little bit more in extra. But let's just take a look at the cover of it now. Basically, this is the first book of this author, Harry Woodgate, which I'm going to talk about here just a bit. This book is about Millie, the granddaughter, again, and Granddad. And Granddad is sad because Gramps is no longer around. I don't know if he passed away. I don't know if they broke up. But anyway, Gramps is sad away. Granddad is sad. Everyone is sad. But then Millie is able to cheer everyone up because Granddad and Millie decide to go in a so-called adventure in Granddad's camper. So after they fix up the camper, they decided that they were going to go out and enjoy the camper. And then the book ends by saying, from Granddad, quote, "Your Gramps would be so happy to see this. It's what he would have wanted. I think we should pack some snacks and hot chocolate and we can go and camp on the beach just like we used to." So then Granddad was cheered up. Great for Granddad. So it's all a wonderful ending. We don't really know what happens. We might not want to know what happens. But anyways, we hear that there is some sort of an adventure and the book ends there. And then we proceed to the next one, which is Granddad's Pride. So I looked a little bit more into this author, Harry Woodgate. So this is what the screenshot from Waterstone has about Harry Woodgate. It's quite a bit of information on him on his website as well. Oh, sorry, Harry Woodgate's pronouns are they, them. Sorry for misgendering Harry. His picture book, his debut book was Granddad's Camper, which I just showed you, which won the Best Illustrated Book at Waterstone's Children's Book Prize 2022. followed by Children's Illustrated Book of the Year at the British Book Awards in 2023. It received notably a Stonewall Book Award honor from the American Library Association and was nominated for the SILIP, so my former Library Professional Association's Greenway Medal for Illustration. Also, he's won other awards from the Week Junior Book Awards, Little Rebels Prize, Diverse Book Awards, etc. This is another book that he illustrated called Queer and Fearless, Poems Celebrating the Lives of LGBTQ plus Heroes. So Harry was an illustrator of this book. We also have a little bit, there's Harry, they themselves on Harry's website. And we also, I believe, have a video of Harry talking about the university that Harry attended, the University of Hertfordshire, talking about how inclusive and equitable it was to attend the university. So let's hear what Harry had to say.
When I was at the university, I really found it to be a really sort of inclusive, open space, especially like going to the LGBT society. So it was really important for me to include like LGBT representation in the books I write for kids, because it's a normal part of life.
So we see this, and it's very obviously difficult to watch. It's difficult for me to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do. What can we put in front of children? This was surprisingly an article from the Telegraph that was quite good, that I want to thank the viewer who sent this to me a few days ago. And the viewer said to me, why can't children read the books that are listed on this article instead of the books that I report on? This is called the 50 Best Children's Books of All Time. It actually does have some good books from the past and from the present that don't contain this kind of sexualization of children ideology that we don't want children to be seeing, obviously. Also, there's another book that I want to talk about by an author that I met at the Wolsingham show over the weekend, that I'll be talking about the show later on in the news. This book is called Noah's Rocket, and it's actually a really fun book to read by the author called Tony Frace. I met him, and he had a stand at the show. Tony did not know anything about the ideology that is being presented to children because he's a self-published author. This book was written in 2004 that I'm talking about here. So this was before this was being put in front of children with all of the ideology and the content that we don't want them to see, because 20 years ago, this was just not a thing in libraries the way it is now. But he also said as well that this book is particularly good for children with autism and special needs, which is not something that he planned. I just thought it was interesting to note this because we've obviously done some work with autism, highlighting the difficulties that children have and parents have who are living with autism. But he had some testimonials from parents and carers who take care of children who have these special needs, as well as a book review by someone from the Leeds Autism Service who said that it was particularly good. So it was easy to read. The chapters were broken down nicely, big font size. The story is very positive. The message is very positive that there are good people left in the world. And I read it yesterday morning and enjoyed it very much, maybe on an adult level. But I would say that it's very enjoyable for both children and adults. So I would highly recommend checking this one out for everyone who's looking for something good to read.
Diane, thank you very much for that. And yes, this is a good message, isn't it? If we know about good books for children, these are the ones to be promoting, giving as gifts and encouraging proper material to go into the minds of young children. Your report there clearly having an effect on at least some of our audience who, I've got to say, were appalled that this stuff is being pushed forward for children. But this is without doubt a deliberate attack. Now, let's move on to the nicer things in life, and a huge thank you to everybody who's supporting the UK column. We also want to encourage people who may be watching us but haven't become a member of the UK column to support us. If you visit the website, and you can click the button to support UK column work with a membership or a donation, and we'd be very grateful if you would do that. Now, a huge, huge thank you to everybody who has bought a ticket for UK on Location for the 18th of October. Excuse me, I have to say that we only have, I think this should appear, there we are, we just have 18 tickets remaining. So this is absolutely fantastic, and a huge thank you to people who bought a ticket over the last few days after my last request for people to come on board so that we can start this wonderful event with a completely full house. If you're not able to go, you can still buy a ticket for the online, and we will be very, very sure to be speaking to everybody, whether you're present in the room or you're with us via remote link. So really great event, and we're going to look forward to seeing everybody there. If you haven't got a ticket, opportunity to buy one. Now let's move on, and Diane, you've got an interview here with an ordinary man who extraordinarily questioned the COVID injections. Sorry, struggling there a bit.
Yeah. He calls himself an ordinary man, but I really don't believe that he is. His name is Tim Coulter, and he is a member of the Stand in the Park group that I am a member of here in the northeast of England. He's a retired architect. He took action against the COVID injections. He's quite a humorous and well-informed man. We did this interview at his home in a beautiful village in Northumberland, as you can see, overlooking a beautiful naturescape that he lives in. And so we recorded this obviously on location at his home. And I would just like to thank We the People Northeast for filming this for us. Please join us tomorrow. There's a lot of special surprises in the interview. So please join me and enjoy Tim tomorrow at 1:00.
Brilliant, Diane. Now, you've also got some articles highlighted from the UK Column website.
Yes, this one in particular I want to talk about. This is by Hugh McCarthy, who's the retired head teacher who does a lot of writing for us from Northern Ireland. And this one was published the week before last. But if we can go to the next slide, we'll see here that there's a bit of a testimonial from Tess Laurie, who is going to be obviously one of our speakers in York. And she said, I highly recommend this reflective article, as well as the links to UK Column news in this article by retired headmaster Hugh McCarthy. In my opinion, UK Column is currently the best media organization reporting on the UK. If you have finally had enough of the BBC and want a trustworthy source of British news, I highly recommend UK Column. So I hope that everyone can join us in York and thank Tess for her review of Hugh and of UK Column. And I have some breaking news as well. I just want to add in quickly from Hugh, who emailed me this morning to say that in Stormont, in Northern Ireland, they have reported that Paul Given, who's the education minister in Northern Ireland, has recommended that the education authority should immediately withdraw its current transgender guidance to schools based on the Supreme Court ruling that we had earlier this year. And I want to say that Hugh has done an amazing job of working to alert Stormont as to what's been going on related to the Supreme Court hearing, and that our articles and our publication of his articles have made apparently a big difference in making this happen in Northern Ireland. So huge congratulations to Hugh and those who have been working with him. I think it's a wonderful news for Northern Ireland.
Right, okay. We've also got a food and health festival here, Diane.
Yes, this is taking place on the 28th of September up in Edinburgh. I hope everyone can join us. The tickets are free. There'll be a range of suppliers and talks. A major highlight, I believe, as well, is that I will be there as a member of Common Knowledge Edinburgh, which is organizing this event. But also Charles Mallett will be coming to speak to us at the festival. So please join us again. Tickets are free and still available.
Excellent. And lastly, our old friend UNESCO.
Well, last week was a big week for UNESCO. They had a Digital Learning Week in Paris. And I'm just starting to get into the videos and the content and the hundreds of pages of policies and reports they have published in relation to this. And mostly it's about AI and the future of education and questioning the role of human teachers in this day and age. So next week, I expect to have a more full report on the event.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. Ben, let's bring you back on, and you're looking at agents of chaos.
Absolutely, and specifically the question, are GB News, its presenters, its financial backers and other people in its orbit deliberately trying to cause breakdown in society for their own benefit?
Or are they change agent puppets being used?
All that. But actually, are they just actually trying to? Are they making money out of this situation that's being constructed around us in society? And well, let's have a little look. Specifically, I'm focusing on this guy. This is Paul Marshall, Sir Paul Roderick Clucas Marshall, should I say? British hedge fund manager, estimated net worth of over £800 million. Major funder and backer of GB News, owner of Unheard. He bought The Spectator. He tried to buy The Telegraph. Massive figure in what could be called the right-wing nationalist media space. Extremely powerful and influential. Importantly, and I mentioned this on the news last year. I'm just going to reiterate it because I think this is incredibly pertinent given what's going on around us at the moment. His wealth primarily came from a hedge fund called Marshall Wace that was started through a 50-50 joint venture with George Soros. George Soros is this guy, founder of Open Society Foundations, giving away more than $32 billion to fund that network. It's about opening up societies, breaking down borders, promoting mass migration, and the associated social and cultural transformation of Western nations in particular. Massive donor to Black Lives Matter over the years, and also importantly to this organisation, International Rescue Committee, again that I spoke about last year, led by David Miliband, currently former Foreign Secretary under Tony Blair. And IRC is about supporting refugees coming into the UK and helping them integrate into British society. Yeah, that's what IRC is about. And GB News, backed by Paul Marshall, is very concerned about the migrant crisis that is happening as a consequence of the activity of people like George Soros and the International Rescue Committee. And ultimately, these are backed by the same man, right? So George Soros is putting money into IRC and left-wing figures like David Miliband, and also creating supposedly right-wing nationalist billionaires like Paul Marshall, who's then marshalling these media assets to push that political agenda. And what's that causing in society? It's causing chaos. Yeah. Chaos and breakdown, conflict on the streets. This is a picture from August last year, the riots across the north of England. And this creates huge opportunities for international investors to come in and buy up assets on the cheap, whether that's property or companies, whatever it might be, selling technologies to the biosecurity state. So, for example, if you were a big shareholder in one of the companies building digital ID systems, then that would be quite good for you if this happened. And also betting against the banking system, importantly, right? Because George Soros, we go back to 1992, very famously was described as the man who broke the Bank of England. This was Black Wednesday in 1992, 33 years ago, next week, actually. And essentially, he didn't actually break the Bank of England. The people running the Bank of England broke the Bank of England. George Soros just made about £1 billion on the day.
As you do.
And as you do, from basically betting against the bank, short selling the pound. And he's at it. This is his MO. It's one of the things that he does to make his money, the billions that he's made over the years. Paul Marshall does it as well, as you would expect. So Marshall Wace hedge fund made $36 million, not quite $1 billion, but still not a bad day's work, actually, betting on the collapse of Banco Espírito Santo back in 2014 as a Portuguese bank. Yeah, so he was short selling. And this is still a strategy that Marshall Wace used. This is a classic hedge fund strategy. They talk about it on their website. So, should we assume that Wace and his company are betting against the British economy?
I think the man on the Clapham omnibus may think that.
I think they probably would have to think that. It makes sense. And actually, it might be irresponsible of him not to bet on the collapse of the British economy. You know what I mean?
I take the point, Ben.
No, like as someone running a hedge fund, maybe he has to do that. But then at the same time, he's got media platforms that are pushing breakdown in British society. They're building a narrative of civil war, civil conflict, people fighting on the streets, and actually and very specifically a financial crisis. So this is not actually from GB News. This is from Jacob Rees-Mogg's personal YouTube channel. But Rees-Mogg is a high-profile GB News presenter as well as being a conservative politician. He's on GB News twice a week. He has a show called State of the Nation. And what he's talking about here in his own YouTube channel is not just if there's going to be a financial crisis, but the fact that there is one, and he's actually querying how serious it's going to be. Yeah. So he's actually saying that this has already happened, right? And he's also talking about jumping ship to reform, interestingly. And GB News are working hand in glove with reform at the moment. In fact, it's impossible to separate the two organisations, really, because you've got Farage and Lee Anderson earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. They're both reform members of Parliament. They're earning huge amounts of money from reform from GB News, have been for several years now. And what's reform all about? Well, let's take a little look at what happened at the Reform Conference over the weekend.
I'm an insomniac. I'm an insomniac. Staring at the ceiling. Waiting for my to switch off. Yes, I'm an insomniac. I'm an insomniac. And all I can hear is the sound of that clock. The sound of that clock. I'm an insomniac. Yeah, I'm an insomniac.
That's Andrea Jenkins, former Conservative Member of Parliament, currently Reform Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire.
And singer.
Let's say she probably shouldn't give up her day job, right? I mean, I don't even know what she's like as a politician, but that was amateur hour, and wearing a spangly jumpsuit, and I mean, what is that? Is that a serious political party?
But all of this razzmatazz is to capture the audience, to bring people in my opinion.
Well, I don't know who he's bringing in, but if you're an international investor, if you're looking and putting money into the UK or backing our economic system or thinking about the how robust our society and our economy is and is going to be into the future, then promoting that as the new wave of political leadership in the country is not what you would be doing. Yeah. So it strikes me that they're deliberately trying to make us look like a laughing stock, quite frankly, and actually the singing didn't end there. I know Mike didn't want to show this, but we are just going to have a little listen to Andrew Jenkins and the Reform leadership singing the national anthem as well.
God save our gracious King, long live
So I think we should have put out a warning before that was shown, Ben. It was utterly dreadful. What is going on? This has got to be a front to draw people in and to ultimately control them. But notice the corruption of our national flag presented in different colours with the word change strapped across it. So I think we're beginning to get a real insight now into what this political party is and where it is going to go. I'm sure you do more on it. If we deal with some of the serious matters going on in this country, sex abuse has always been one. Now, this is a BBC headline, which I picked up on this morning, where the headline says, ex-Sergeant Major admits sexually assaulting soldier who then went on to take her own life. Now, this is a truly tragic and very, very sad case. But I think we need to ask the question, was the Army's procrastination over investigating what has taken place? And the family are saying the cover-up into what took place and led to the tragic death of this young lady. Is this procrastination and the cover-up because of the overall failings of diversity in military policy. Now, this is a very emotive subject. UK Column has been touching on it for some time, but many people would say that women were brought into the military for the specific reason to create problems. Now, this in no way justifies what the Sergeant Major may or may not have done. But what we are talking about is the fact that we've had a diversity policy introduced, which since its inception, if I remember correctly, was about 1991 for the Royal Navy, we've had problem after problem. So the sexes being played off against each other, the chaos that you've been intimating, Ben, taking place in the military, and at the end of the day, people are being hurt. But of course, this is not just going on in the military. This is a report from the BBC about sexual harassment, which is occurring between barristers. So we're now into the law courts and the chambers of these individuals. So the headline from a KC called Eve is that one of the other barristers put his hand down her tights. And this was actually repeated before the lady was able to force this individual off. But a review has said that sexual harassment is widespread amongst barristers. Now, who has been conducting the review? Well, of course, it was Harriet Harman, as stated on the previous slide there. This is just one of the quotes from her. Bullying, harassment and sexual harassment is a problem at the bar and on the bench within chambers and courtrooms in open court and behind robing room doors. So Baroness Harriet Harman is the lady put in charge of dealing with this problem. But of course, some of us have got a long memory about this lady. And if we're going back into the mid-90s and further back into the very late 80s, early 90s, we've got the fact that she was involved with the National Council for Civil Liberties as the legal officer at a time when NCCL was supporting the paedophile information exchange. And much has been written on the fact that Harriet Harman appeared to take no action to distance her organisation from this PI organisation that was clearly promoting sex with very young teenagers and or children. So part of the reports here did in fact also come out in the BBC, and the part of the quote to this article is that the NCCL, of which Harriet Harman was a part, continued to defend having the organisation PI as a member. As late as 1983, an NCCL officer was quoted in the Daily Mail saying the group was campaigning to lower the age of consent to 14. And that is a very mild statement, because much other evidence showed that this organisation was absolutely promoting paedophilia with very much younger children. So, Ben, I don't know what your reaction is, but is Harriet Harman the safe pair of hands to protect ladies within the legal system or any other persons in the UK? I would suggest not. And so that we understand how bad the situation is, this is part of the article report on Harriet Harman herself. It says, in her report, Harman writes about a fee-page judge who had sex in his judicial chambers more than 15 years ago. Paul Kirtley was found to have committed misconduct and issued with a formal warning, he remains on the bench. And this really is where we start to spell out that Harriet Harman, I would suggest, with her Labour colleagues, later New Labour colleagues, was actually promoting, helping to promote actions which clearly place members of the community at risk. And we are now reaping the so-called rewards in what we see happening in wider society today. So a lot of questions to be asked around these individuals, their networks, and what they were trying to achieve within UK society. Diane, let's bring you back with us. And of course, abuse of women through the Fornethy system. UK column has reported on a great deal, but that's now moving forward with a court case coming up, I think.
Yes, thanks, Brian. I received some updates from Lynn Sheeran, who is you've interviewed previously as part of your Gutsy Women series as one of the leaders of the fights for justice for the Fornethy residential school survivors. She told me that, as reported by the BBC earlier this year, that one of the former staff of Fornethy would be facing trial. That trial is now scheduled to start on the 22nd of September and will finish on the 20th of October in the Glasgow High Court. She faces a total of 26 charges alleged to have happened at Fornethy and Angus between 1967 and 1983, according to the BBC, which lists a string of allegations of, quote, cruel and unnatural treatment of the girls, including claims of physical violence. So we will be watching that trial with great interest. I would also like to mention Colin Smith, who I mentioned briefly when we did our live news at the Hope Festival a couple of weeks ago. He's a MSP Labour member who, while he's no longer in Labour, he's been expelled from the Labour Party. He's been the one leading the fight for the petition in Scottish Parliament for these survivors of Fornethy to access the child abuse redress scheme in Scotland. He is scheduled now to appear on the 24th of September in Dumfries Sheriff Court. And why is that? Well, he's been charged in connection with alleged possession of indecent images of children. And also he has allegations against him that he had placed a hidden camera in a cubicle inside the loo in the Scottish Parliament. So he's denied these allegations. That there are questions, obviously, that people have raised. We don't know for sure. Did he really do these things? Is it a setup by the Labour Party? Is it possible that they're all doing these kinds of things and he's just been called out because of this case coming up with Fornethy? These are all allegations nobody really knows, but just to say that we need to be watching this trial carefully as well, since he's been the leader for their fight for justice for the last few years.
Yes, Diane, thank you for that. So there's a lot more to come out about Fornethy, and UK Column will be working with the ladies more. We're looking to do another interview shortly with another individual who unfortunately suffered that system. So more and more of the women are coming to light as time goes on, but the establishment seems to drag its heels over the investigation and indeed prosecution. Diane, take us on to some better things, and you've been visiting County Durham show.
Yeah, so over the weekend, I attended the Wolsingham show, which according to their website is County Durham's biggest and best open air show and also England's oldest. So it was over the weekend, as I said, and I want to take you through some good and bad parts of it. So I want to do a few things here with this. First of all, I just have some images we'll go through quickly of things I took that I saw when I was there, just to kind of lift things up a bit. There's some giant tortoises that were near the entrance to the show. We have, of course, the usual sort of horses, horse riding, horse shows, goat shows, sheep, all of those sort of farm animals, things that you would expect to see at a country show. It was particularly interesting to see the tractor races and the tractor pulls and watching all that CO2 being emitted up into the sky. We had vintage tractors, so lots of tractors, lots of old cars, again, lots of CO2 emissions taking place, I'm sure. Of course, you can't have a country show without guns. So here's a rifle range, Bolt and Branch. There was a very small gun display from what I understand. I didn't go into that one, but that's what I heard. Here was a man drawing tractors. So it's nice to see people doing something artistic. And he was selling some of the work for sale there right behind him. And I really enjoyed seeing some of the local crafts because it was all things based here in County Durham in the Northeast. Jewelry, different kinds of crafts. This was sea glass, which is famous in the area because that can be found on the shore. Ugly pots. We also have as well, these were just a couple that decided to start this business to create these ugly pots that were for sale, with different things on them. There were some bands that we enjoyed listening to. This was the Bebops. Somebody called her in the audience, somebody said, oh, this is the Dolly Parton of the Northeast. She was actually quite spirited. Enjoyed that as well. These were some Christmas crafts. So we had the craft shows on display, people, different people of all ages making crafts and having this judged. I bought a couple of local foods. I guess you could say this is local honey from bees that it's been distributed and made in County Durham. Because I left the dogs alone all day, I felt really guilty about that. So I bought them some premium dog treats that were local as well. So they got venison, duck, and pheasant and partridge. They've enjoyed the pheasant and partridge so far today. And again, it gets a bit dystopian here. This was a display from a security company that showed these kind of robot-looking things, which really didn't seem to fit in with the overall good feelings that were at the show. But that was something that they were trying to sell, I guess, for security equipment for your farm. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't talk to anyone, but this was a piece of artwork showing all of the rubbish. This was done by some Cubs in, I forget which school it was, somewhere here in the Northeast, where they're making artwork out of rubbish. So there's, I guess, some sustainable development goals things going on there. This was displayed from the Farming of the Future from the UK government's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And so they had a lot of information that they're on display. I picked up several of their cards. Maybe I can talk about this some more in extra. But one in particular was them showing that, what are we going to do about 2030? That's coming up. So we see as well here in another booth, we have no farmers, no food, no future. Now half price was £50, now 25. But back in the farming booth there, we had cards out saying, asking, what do you hope the farming sector will look like by 2030? And that was a card that I took a photo of, and people were asked to respond to that by putting in their responses to say, well, this is what we think it will look like. So we'll talk about that some more in extra. But I just want to say that, it was interesting to think about how much fun that was, but that ultimately, as I heard somebody comment, if the people in power have their way, these kinds of shows would no longer exist, because these kinds of things won't be allowed to be happening anymore, especially when it comes to farms and just families having a good time and enjoying local ingredients. So we need to keep these things going, Brian.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting to see that government policies are brought right into these sorts of rural shows in order to help mould people's opinions. And as we discussed prior to the news in the question, if I bring this one just up on screen, it's asking, what do you hope the farming sector will look like by 2030? So as usual, nothing about the present and getting on with life and making the best of each day and producing food on a daily basis. This is all drifting people's minds into utopia in the future. But great to see that farming and rural communities still alive and well. And as you say, Diane, a very, very important part of our culture, and we all need to help support it. Now, before we finish today, we're just going to show a little clip. This was amusing in my eyes, but this is Sky Australia commenting on the illustrious Mr. Lammy.
People here might not know David Lammy. David Lammy is the new
I know David Lammy.
Deputy Prime Minister. Now, David Lammy has never been known as a great, shall we say, intellectual genius of London political circles. This footage of him on a celebrity quiz show has just emerged.
It's great.
Just have a look. Yeah. Play along.
It's probably the case that only that trans women don't have ovaries, but a cervix, I understand, is something that you can have following various procedures and hormone treatment.
And there's also been other clips of him where he went on a quiz show, and he didn't know that Tony Soprano was in The Sopranos. He thought that they were that it was The Godfather and a whole bunch of other things. And he also once, even when they were trying to find a new pope, and the BBC tweeted about, will there be black smoke or white smoke, which is, of course, how the Vatican announces the vote has been successful, said, do we have to make this a racial thing? That's how dumb he is.
Yeah. Dumb and being mocked overseas. And Diane, let's finish on the government's alert system. I think we should have the alert system warning about the government, but what did you get?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many people experienced the warning alerts that came out yesterday at 3 p.m. This first started, I believe it was in 2022, I think is what Kenny reminded me of. And so this was back when we were supposed to be scared 3 years ago. At the time, I turned off the extreme and the severe alerts on my phone, and they're still off to this day. But this was from earlier this year, from January, saying that at some point this year, we were going to have the Armageddon alert that will override millions of Brits' phones and trigger a loud siren, and what to do if you're driving, because apparently it was going to be so scary that if you were driving, you might actually crash your car. So for those of you who may have experienced this on Sunday, I know some people had a really loud sound. Brian, I know you said yours was quieter, but this was from GB News on Facebook that I saw alerting us what was going to happen over the weekend, saying that this emergency alert could trigger heart attacks days before the alarm was set to sound on our phones. So I know some people have been turned off, some people didn't get them. And so, Brian, you said yours was nice and pleasant. So I would like to hear what yours sounded like, because that's not what I heard from everyone.
Well, Diane, mine was just a melodic ringtone. I mean, if it had been a real crisis and nuclear war, it would have been quite amusing to hear this soft music and then suddenly somebody saying you've all been bombed to pieces. But the whole thing is sheer madness and nobody should pay any attention. It is all designed to ramp up the fear so that the government can introduce the sorts of mad policies which we've covered on today's news. So let's leave it there. Diane, thank you very much for joining me. Ben, great to have you here in the studio. Huge thank you to everybody who's joined us today, wherever you are in the world. And finally, once again, thank you all so very much for the fantastic support you've all given the UK column. And it's going to be great to move on from 2025 into exciting things in 2026. For today, that's the news. Thank you for joining us. If you're a member of UK Column, stay with us. We'll have UK Column Extra in just a few moments. Bye-bye.